You're listening to Fusion Patrol, a listener-supported podcast. Each week, we take a single episode of a science fiction TV series, movie, or audio and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. Welcome to the discussion. Hello and welcome to World Beyond Movie Night on Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Ben.
And tonight we are looking at the 1956 classic film Sora no Daikaiju Radon, or, literally translated, Radon, Giant Monster of the Sky, or, as it's presented in the US and elsewhere, Rodan. Synopsis. It's just another day down in the coal mines between Fukuoka and Asoyama, and miners Yoshizo and Goro are fighting again. What a pair of clowns. It's not a typical day, though, as when the crews head down into the mine, the west tunnel floods, and both Yoshizo and Goro are cut off from the rest of the crew. Engineer Shigeru is called to inspect the flood, but what they find in the water is the body of Yoshizo, murdered by some form of sharp blade. Goro is immediately the suspect. Shigeru has a girlfriend. She is Kyo, who just happens to be Goro's sister, and she's worried about her brother and also does not believe he's a killer. A team of 3 led by a police officer searches the flooded mine for Goro, but they find something else that kills them all before they can escape. That night, a giant bug, larger than a man, attacks the village, killing several. They chase the creature back into the mine and call the military. When they confront the creature inside the mine, they find their guns are of limited value and that there are many more of the creatures. They also find the dead body of Goro. When Shigeru tries to retrieve the body, a tunnel collapse caused by the military separates him from the others. A team of scientists is called in, and they identify the creatures as giant megaluna, prehistoric dragonfly nymphs, brought forth, perhaps, by some form of tectonic activity. And soon, there is another earthquake, this one opening a crater between the mine and Asayama. In the giant crater, they find Shigeru, alive, but some trauma has caused him to completely lose his memory. Nothing works to restore his memory, and he is hospitalized, where Kyo tends to him, hoping for his memory to return. There is an eruption at Asayama, and soon thereafter, a supersonic object is spotted in the skies. Faster than fighter jets and unimaginably maneuverable, the object destroys any jets that approach it. But its supersonic wake also causes massive damage in Beijing, the Philippines, Okinawa, and Tokyo. The object remains unidentified. A young couple goes to the summit of Asayama to take pictures, but the object passes over them, and all that is found is their camera and a shoe. Suspicions that they may have committed suicide are dismissed when the film in their camera is developed and a wing and a talon of a pteranodon is seen. This is, of course, impossible since the pteranodon's wing size topped out at 28 feet. Shigeru has made little progress until Kyo shows him that the lovebirds in his room are having babies. As he sees the bird's eggs hatch, his memory returns, and he can now recount his tale of terror. Trapped behind the cave-in, he found himself in a massive chamber filled with megaluna and a gigantic egg, which hatched in front of his eyes. Inside, an enormous pteranodon emerges and begins eating the megaluna. His reason destroyed, Shigeru wandered off only to be found after the crater formed. A scientific team searches the chamber and finds a giant piece of eggshell, confirming Shigeru's story. Near Fukuoka, jets engage the monster, now named Rodan, and while it appears they may have inflicted some damage, the jets are all destroyed. Landing in the middle of Fukuoka, Rodan is surrounded by the military with tanks and large guns. Rodan appears to be taking damage and is trapped on the ground, but Rodan is not defenseless. The flapping of his wings causes massive damage to the city and the military, and then a second Rodan flies to the rescue, its sonic wake causing even more damage, giving the first Rodan the opportunity to escape. They fly off and disappear. The 2 Rodans are later found in the crater of Asayama, and so the military launches a plan to attack the crater, collapse it, and trap the Rodans inside. Geologists warn this will cause Asayama to erupt. Better still, says the military. They evacuate the area and initiate the plan, which seems to be working, and the volcano begins to erupt. The Rodans fly out of the mountain, but the wounded one succumbs and falls into the flow of lava. Its mate attempts to come to its aid and also succumbs to the volcano. Once again, mankind has made the world safe by killing a couple of the cutest little prehistoric monsters ever. The end. All right, Rodan. Rodan, what'd you think?
This was only the second time that I've seen this movie in its entirety.
Me too.
First time, I think I might have been 12. So I was very curious about seeing it again. And, I'm listening to your synopsis and I'm, kind of pacing out when you start mentioning Rodan. Now, as I was watching it, maybe I just missed something, but according to my timer, it feels like, Rodan sort of makes his presence known, but we really don't see adult Rodan in its full glory until about an hour into the movie.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and the movie is only like an hour and a half, maybe a little less. Actually, it's an hour and 20.
My first note here is interesting story structure.
Yeah.
I'm not actually upset about that in a way.
Not entirely.
Because there actually is sort of like a mystery going on. If you were watching this film and you didn't know this was Rodan.
Right.
Then you'd be like, okay, there's this mine and then there's accidents and then there's these crazy bugs. And honestly, you could think the bugs were enough for a monster movie.
True.
Right?
As kaiju movies go, if I did not know any better, I would have assumed, oh, these are the bad kaiju, and then receiving Rodan at the very end would have been a bit of a surprise. Looking back on it, because my introduction to Rodan was actually, and unfortunately, people forgive me for using the cheapy American title, Monster Zero.
Okay, Monster Zero. Yeah, that he's in that one. He's
that was my first introduction to Rodan. So then I kind of like go back and find Rodan's origin story, if you will, and was surprised. I mean, not so much then, but looking at it now, I was really surprised when I watched it the other night and thought, wow, for a title, the title Monster, we're really not getting a whole heck of a lot of him. It really was the dragonfly nymphs that were causing the most havoc throughout a good chunk of the film. And again, that's not necessarily a complaint. And like you, one of the first things that I noticed is that I was really fascinated by how well this story was structured and the way it was paced. And I was very intrigued by it until I started thinking, well, we haven't really gotten Rodan in his full glory yet. So, okay, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if there was something. How do I put this? I have always, so like you, I've only seen the film as far as I know twice. And honestly, the first time I saw it was, well, I wasn't 12. I was quite a bit older. It's when these remastered DVDs came out. So they remastered a bunch of these films on DVD and they look really nice. And they don't look Blu-ray. And I understand that there's a Blu-ray version of Rodan out that's even more amazing. But I don't have that. I have the DVD, and that's probably 15 years old, maybe. When that was released, and that would be the first time I saw it. So, I've seen a lot of Rodan, but I just hadn't really seen the introductory film, and I don't know, which is the first film I saw Rodan in. It could be Monster Zero. That was a very popular one. I think he's not in the first Mothra film, but I think he's in this. No, because there's a standalone Mothra film, but then there's Godzilla versus the Thing. That's also the American title. I think it is.
Right, but Rodan doesn't show up in that.
Does he? Isn't Godzilla and Rodan fighting each other in that one? And Mothra?
No, that's a King Ghidorah.
It's hard to remember.
Where King Godzilla and Rodan are fighting each other. Meanwhile, King Ghidorah is wreaking havoc, and Mothra's trying to talk them into baby Mothra. In fact,
baby Mothra,
is trying to talk them into teaming up, and they don't want to until Godzilla and Rodan are both subject to the random attackings of King Ghidorah. At which point, then they're both pissed off, not at each other. So then they finally team up. That's that story. But that was my second introduction to Rodan, because after I saw Monster Zero, I thought, oh well, this obviously is a sort of a sequel in some fashion. So I need to find the original, which I never did because there was no such thing as finding an original at that age. I just happened to be lucky, and here it is, on a Saturday horror show.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, I'm quite positive I'd never seen the original Rodan, and like the original Godzilla film, there's a story there.
Yep.
Whereas in the later ones, it's really is an excuse just to bring the monsters out.
Let's just bring the monsters in. Yeah, no morality plays at stake here.
Yeah. So, and then, what are you going to do when you want to bring three monsters in and fight, like in Monster Zero or King Ghidorah? I think the difference, which Monster Zero is, by the way, is King Ghidorah.
Right.
In case anybody wanted to know.
Okay. Yeah. Spoilers.
Those two films are basically, one happens on Earth, and then another one is aliens want to take our monsters to fight, and it's actually a lie. And so some of it happens on the alien planet, but it's it's all kind of the same. Yeah.
The movie's how old now?
Yeah. Well, this one's 1956, so it's a few years old now. So, but there are some weird things about the plot. So, for example, the Goro and Yoshizo subplot.
Right.
I mean, what?
It's pointless.
They've got I guess you've got the opportunity to kill the guy off and have them suspect it to be a fairly ordinary thing. So the cops go in looking for the guy, and then that crew gets killed.
Right. I mean, at best, it's simply a red herring.
It also brings in Kyo as Goro's sister, who happens to be, I kind of get the impression they're a couple.
Yeah,
I call them as such
too.
Because, she spends an awful lot of time tending to him at the hospital when he's ill. So I'm pretty sure that they're boyfriend and girlfriend, but they really don't make a big deal out of it. Just because she's his brother, it complicates things, because Shigeru goes to see her the night of the bug, which if Goro weren't her brother, then it would be clear he's going to see her. But because Goro's her brother, he could be coming because he knows she's distraught and she's the brother of his friend or the sister of his friend, right? There's that, I know you and I know you're having trouble, so I'm going to go by and visit you, not just I was going to drop by to see my girlfriend kind of thing. And then
I think it's both.
But the fact that she stays with him in the hospital shows that's what it is. She's basically tending to him, and that shorthand.
The thing is, I don't remember that subplot. So as I was watching it the other night, it was really. So by the time I'm watching it the other night, I mean, it was completely new to me, and I immediately thought, oh, it's both. He's there to comfort her because of her brother Goro, but Shigeru and Kiro are an item. I mean, it was so clear to me.
She's the cutest girl in town, So
yeah, because everybody else is like an old maid. But they're much older. She's the only young, cute one there. So, right. Pickings are slim. Okay, that was very mean of me, but oh well.
At least she didn't look like Barbara Bang. And,
oh my God, you went there.
I was, throwing out the red meat. Like one, yeah.
Anyway. But we love you, Barbara Bain. We really do. If your skin were pulled any tighter, you'd look like transparent paper.
What's that? Maybe that's what End of the World Doctor Who episode. Maybe that was an homage.
Oh, Cassandra.
Yeah.
Moisturize me. Oh, so that was supposed to be Barbara Bain?
Could be.
My God.
Okay. One thing that I do like about this film, which I do not like about Godzilla films in general, and for that matter, later Rodan films, although he never gets his own solo outing. I think that given enough time, without blowing up a volcano, I think the military would have taken Rodan out. right? They gave clear signs during the course of this film that, for example, when the jets were attacking Rodan, even though Rodan managed to ultimately destroy all the jets, they said we have managed to reduce the creature's speed by half.
True. That is true.
So that was just with 3 to 5 jets. They get a whole air force, and you got lots of other militaries around the world. Rodan could not have withstood the numbers of the onslaught, right? It just eventually they would have been able to overwhelm Rodan. And they were doing the same thing on the ground in Fukuoka.
Mm-hmm.
Rodan appeared to be unable to take off because it kept getting shot with the missiles.
Right.
And it only got away because, surprise, there's a second one. And
True.
Given that, they could have possibly, with enough jets, with enough military, they could have eventually taken out. There would have been a lot of casualties. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's a slam dunk, we're out of here. But it was not an insurmountable problem like Godzilla, which is always almost invariably portrayed as being immortal because it's a Godzilla. It's a radioactive monster. The best they can ever hope to do is to trap it inside a volcano, lava flow, or get it to go back to sleep, or only in the very first film do they kill Godzilla.
Yeah.
And in every other film,
Godzilla somehow lives.
Yeah, he's like, it turns out he's alive. Yeah. And we're good at killing things. We're really good at killing things. And if it's a mortal creature, we can find a way to kill it. It will happen. It will happen. And in this film, it looked like it was going to happen. And in fact, we did. In fact, it was the military's actions that did ultimately kill it. But, the volcano helped. Volcanoes are tight.
Volcanoes are cool.
Yeah. I also love the fact, and at the same time hate the fact, that they managed to give Rodan more personality than any of the humans.
That's pretty typical.
That final scene
is pretty heartbreaking.
It is.
Now, I noticed that the very first time I saw the movie, I should back up and say that, yeah, I did say that I've seen this movie twice. There was sort of a third time, but I say sort of because all I did was catch the last 10 minutes. And so the very first glimpse that I ever had of this movie was watching the 2 Rodans die and me thinking, oh, well, that just sucks.
Yeah. It's like one of them going back for the other is just, and I think, there's a parallel there, I think, with those lovebirds that are in the hospital, because if I'm not mistaken, lovebirds once paired, typically one goes down the other. Yeah, one goes down, the other one's going to go too. So that's the parallel is there from the very beginning, because the first moment we see him in the hospital, you can hear those damn birds chirping. Oh
yeah, I kept waiting. Okay, well that's a smoking gun. I'm waiting for it to finally show up.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm kind of surprised. In fact, to be honest, I'm actually surprised it took that long.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. Now I remember what I was going to say. I haven't been able to find any proof of this. And I know I've looked, although I haven't looked like in conjunction with today's recording session, and I probably should have. But I've done it in the past because it bugged me. Something happens in the course of this film, and it feels out of sequence. And that's, and of course we do have the bit where, he does it's a flashback to him in the staggering or inside the cave. And so you could have structured this film where immediately after he went down, they had the sequence in the cave, right? And then later they find him we didn't have to do it by flashback. They are showing him pictures of dinosaurs immediately after he is brought back. They show him a picture of a T-Rex. They show him a picture of a Styracosaurus, and then, which is a very interesting choice. And then they show him a picture, and then they show him a picture. Then they show him a photograph of the Megaluna. Okay. And then he gets kind of upset, and they let him go to sleep. But if you look at that stack, the picture of the Pteranodon is there too. They just never got around to showing it to him. But it's like, why are they showing him pictures of dinosaurs? What made them think there was another prehistoric creature involved in this story? The only thing we've seen to date, the only evidence we've seen to date, there have been no planes spotted. There's been no destruction. There is just strictly them, that mine, and the Megaluna. And yet they're showing him pictures of dinosaurs to try to jog his memory. Like, why?
I kind of got the feeling that they were thinking, well, if the Megaluna could be alive, then maybe these things could be alive too.
Well, it's
sort of
impossible, except that Megaluna would be much, much older than T-Rex, Styracosaurus, and Pteranodon, all Cretaceous, and Megaluna would be like Carboniferous.
As you have pointed out many, many times in the past, and either on this podcast or in private conversation, whenever it came to telling some sort of a prehistoric origin in a movie that's supposed to have a current day setting, they always got it wrong.
Yeah, that's true. They're not good on the paleontology, but it's still, I just don't see, if I had seen, right, the Megaluna, I would be showing them other prehistoric bugs.
Of that same era. Yeah, but you're
bugs, go with bugs, but or showing pictures of like his family, or what are you trying to jog his memory? But why dinosaurs? It just doesn't make any sense unless there is something else that has happened that made somebody think there was a prehistoric dinosaur out there. And I just wonder if something's been cut out, if something has been reordered. I just don't know. Like the fact that the birds are in there way, way earlier than you would think that they needed to be. They're so, the chirping of those birds, which we never even see.
No.
Are
not until
omnipresent in that hospital
until Kira's reaching for their nest.
Yep. Their cage in the nest. Yeah.
Yeah. To show the egg that is inside the nest, and that's what triggers all this. That's the first time we see them. But I mean, unless your ears just cannot pick up birds chirping, there's no way you can miss this. And I kept thinking that has got to be a trigger at some point.
Yeah. Now, here's another thing: the Megaluna. What do they say they are?
Dragonfly
nymphs.
Nymphs.
Yep. And what does a dragonfly nymph become?
A dragonfly.
And what does dragonflies do?
They just kind of fly around.
They
eat
fly.
Other insects. Yeah, they fly.
They fly. So if you had a creature that was flying around, destroying things after you'd seen giant Megaluna nymphs, wouldn't the logical conclusion be there's a giant dragonfly flying around?
Yeah, I mean, what else gave birth to them?
Yeah. So there is this connection to an other flying monster.
Yeah. And
then they don't use it in any way.
The only thing we can assume, I mean, I know that there are some, and maybe somebody just made this huge leap in logic, which was a very bad one, that the adult Megaluna, however many there were, died.
Well, were they all eaten by Rodan when they hatched? Is that solve that problem, or are they still running around out there?
Well, that's kind of, I'm kind of thinking they died after laying eggs.
No, I'm talking about the actual the nymphs themselves.
That's what I mean.
They don't lay eggs, do they?
Megaluna, or the dragonflies?
The dragonfly,
right?
Dude,
I just assumed that they did. I didn't think that they gave birth to live larvae.
No, I think maybe the dragonfly gives birth to the eggs, and then the eggs become the nymphs, and then the nymphs transform into the dragonflies. So my question is, did we get rid of all the nymphs because Rodan ate them all? Or are they all still down there in the mine turning into dragonflies?
Well, I guess, the world may never know.
Anyway, okay. So here's a question for you. I do know the answer to this, so feel free to speculate. If you had very crafty of them not to say how fast Rodan is traveling, just that it's 1.5 times the speed of a jet.
Yeah.
A military jet, which still very fast, but we don't get caught in this whole, oh, come on, 7 times the speed of sound, or whatever it is. But Rodan produces contrails.
Yes.
Would a non-jet powered object produce contrails, which is a condensation, not chemicals spread out by the government.
Right.
It is condensation in the cooler atmosphere, basically clouds.
That's what I noticed that too, and I started thinking about that, and I didn't bother to look it up, and I should have, because I've been to a lot of military air shows, and I've seen, especially when the weather is really cool, I've seen that buffeting
right
off the wing many, many times, and was told early on that's just condensation off the wing. And I thought, okay, well, I suppose granted, I've only ever seen that on a jet plane. I've never seen that with a propeller plane that I can remember. And I'm kind of wondering, and maybe there's some science that says it needs to be going a certain speed in order for that to be achieved.
Well, of course, when you're flying through the upper atmosphere, which is very cold, and a jet is producing heat because it's a jet engine, you're getting contrails, you're getting condensation, you're roiling the atmosphere. However, I did look this up. Yes, any sufficiently fast-moving object, flying object, is going to create a pressure differential because that's how you fly.
Right. Bernoulli's principle.
That will create contrast. So it is absolutely true that Rodan theoretically could have created contrails traveling at those speeds just off of his wings, which are not flapping, I might add.
No, they're not. And I was about to bring that up. I want to know how in the blazes this creature don't get me wrong. We're talking a monster movie. So already we have to chuck a good deal of logic out the window.
But at the same Megaluna time, powered.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm asking myself, so how does it manage to achieve supersonic flight without any kind of mechanical assist?
It's just gassy.
Oh, I guess that is it.
Yep.
That's got to be it. So there is some sort of flatulent propulsion going on.
Yes. So that could also be causing some of the condensation. But I think coming back to the condensation, the contrails, I think it's a nice effect because you see the thing flying and you just see the contrail, but you can't tell what it is. And so the jets are trying to establish contact with the object, but it's very clear it's there and it's doing crazy maneuvers in the sky. And I really like that, except of course the fact that it does appear that Rodan is jet powered. But there you go. It's a monster, and it's a big monster. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, at some point you just have to dispense with logic and say, okay, this is just, it's a monster movie. Science be damned.
Another thing that's an odd part about the structure of this film, and again, I guess it's, we could argue that you want to hold the reveal of Rodan for as long as you can because the special effects cost money, take time and effort, and are harder to film than the human parts of the film. So, we may look at these films and say, oh, they've got no budget, they're so cheap, and which, they're not really. So you might not apply the same critical filter that we do today and say, well, the reason they're not doing that is because special effects are expensive and it's a low budget film. So holding Rodan back or keeping Rodan hidden could literally be also a budgetary aspect. But is this budgetary or is this suspense in that they actually hold a section of this film in the middle where they do what is considered the cardinal sin of movie making? They tell, don't show. They have that sequence where they go to the Beijing radio station talking about this object which is causing destruction in its wake. We have seen no destruction at all at this point. We have not seen Rodan do anything except, I think, the one jet that was attacking it got destroyed. But We also heard about a British jet that got cracked down over the China Sea. But then we cut to the people talking in Beijing about how there's enormous damage. And then you go to the Philippines and there's enormous damage. And then there's Okinawa and there's enormous damage.
We don't see any of it.
We see nothing of it. We are being told that there's a lot of damage going on. And it's not until we get to I think it's not in Fukuoka at that point. I forgot which town it was in, but with the bridge and the tourist bus, that's the first time we really see Rodan come into the ground, and his flyby causes, damn it, and wipes out the bridge there. So, and that's around the first jet of this, not the first jet, but the first jet squadron attack, because that's where it goes underwater and comes back out of the other side. So is that we're cheaping out? He's wiping out cities and he's all over the place. I mean, he's really moving fast. He's Beijing and the Philippines and Okinawa. And of course, we later find out there's two of them. And then they're saying, oh, and it's destroying everything. And we're getting nothing. We're getting none of that. And I can't tell if that's just to wind up the audience or get out of showing destroying Beijing.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I haven't done enough research on this film to determine, was Rodan held back purely for budgetary reasons? I doubt, and that thought did cross into my mind because I kept thinking, this is a really weird tactic. I mean, I've seen, I don't know. The jury's still out on that because I'm not a big fan personally of the late in the movie reveal. I personally don't like that. I remember when I saw the latest American movie, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Ugh.
And we get the mutos throughout a good chunk of the film, and we get glimpses of Godzilla, but we really don't get Godzilla in his glory going full tilt fighting mode until like the last act of the film. And I remember reading that the film director deliberately chose to do that.
Yeah.
He wanted to hold it back. And yet when it came time for them to do what will be the follow-up of that universe of movies, which is Kong of Skull Island, that director thought, no, I didn't like that idea. I'm going to reveal King Kong within the first 30 minutes of this movie, which I personally preferred. So I'm really of this school of thought where if this is the title monster, give me my title monster. I want to see, and I want to see what kind of havoc he can really do. Now, maybe they hadn't quite perfected the cheap production value of destroying paper thin houses that you can make on a dime, and just have some person in a costume just stomp on them or just blow them over with wind or anything like that. Because obviously that becomes very prevalent in much later Japanese monster movies. I mean, you just see that everywhere. Maybe they hadn't quite nailed that technique down yet, given the age of this movie. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one.
I can sympathize with both schools of thought. There is a time and a place. It depends on the story you're telling, right? I mean, it is kind of hard when you say the title of this film is Rodan. And don't let me forget to come back to the title of the film. And so therefore your expectation is Rodan, right? But it's really hard. No, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's really hard to tell a story about a monster destroying things, right? The only stories there are to be told are generally about the people responding to the monster, right? You're only going to get plot with the humans, unfortunately, for the vast majority. So, that makes sense as to be what we're supposed to be following along. And if the story is a mystery, and in this story, it is a mystery, it's like, there are stories like Columbo episodes where you can reveal who the killer was and how the killer did it, and then spend the rest of the episode figuring out how the cop solves the problem, which is a very flip it on the end. Or then there's the whodunit formula where you're putting all this stuff together and you don't want to reveal the killer till the end. And this film seems to be following that more of a mystery approach. So I do think this one works because they kept me entertained along the way. But I still kind of was wondering about that sequence where they were blowing up cities that weren't actually getting destroyed on camera. Or even don't show me the city or don't show me Rodan destroying Beijing. Show me Beijing destroyed.
The aftermath. Yeah, show me the aftermath.
Yes. Show me the aftermath and people and then this thing and it flew over and it was like a flying saucer or whatever, and whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
Yeah, the only downside for me, and of course I'm not being fair when I say this, but knowing that Rodan is the monster and knowing what Rodan is, I'm sitting back here thinking, okay, I want to see Rodan. Now, so of course, again, I'm not being fair because that movie, as much as I love Japanese kaiju movies, that movie was not made for me. It was made for the audience at that time when the movie came out.
Yep.
So I have to try to project myself back to that time and say, how would I have responded to it? And you were right. I was entertained by this movie. It did hold my attention throughout it all, albeit partly for some of the wrong reason. I mean, yes, I thought it was very interesting to see how they were dealing with the dragonfly nymphs. And then there's this new mystery about what's destroying everything. Had I not known anything, and literally nothing, if I had known nothing about this movie, it is very possible that I would have been very engaged in the mystery aspect of it. Well, right now there is no mystery. The only mystery I've got is, okay, clock's ticking. When am I going to get Rodan?
Yeah, so the actual title.
I'm not being fair.
The title of the film, Sora no Daikaiju Radon. And, well, all right, we'll start with one. Rodan is not the monster's name in Japan. It's Radon. Radon, which is the end part of pterodon. Hence the name. They changed it over here because radon or radon is an element and they didn't want to confuse. They just didn't want to. They just thought, let's just make it Rodan. Okay. But Sora no Daikaiju Radon, Daikaiju Radon is giant monster Rodan. Sora no is of the sky. So basically, giant monster of the sky, Radon. If this film had been called Giant Monster of the Sky without the name, and you're watching this film, again, we come back to those dragonfly nymphs.
It's true.
Right? Nymphs will become dragonflies, and dragonflies from those nymphs would be giant monsters of the sky.
That's true.
You know, and if you didn't know Rodan was a pteranodon, you would be watching this film unaware. And of course, there's probably a pteranodon on the movie lobby poster, which ruins this whole theory. But, you know, that's how it goes. Now, let's see. Let's talk a little bit about pteranodons since I'm here. They put pteranodons at like 28-foot maximum wingspan, I believe, in the film. And actually, the largest known is 25, but pretty close.
Hey,
pretty close.
3 feet, I'm not going to balk at that.
That's the biggest specimens found are like 23 to 25 feet, pteranodons. Rodan, however, is 270 feet wingspan. So,
yeah,
literally an order of magnitude bigger.
Well, they even acknowledge that, though. They do say something. They do say something in the movie that this thing is a heck of a lot bigger than the standard examples that they have of pteranodon.
I do think it's funny that they go like, well, why do you think? It's like, I don't know. Nukes, maybe? Atomic bombs? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But at least it's not definitive.
But
Godzilla is definitive.
For Godzilla. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like that. This is atomic horror. But in the case of Rodan, it's like, I don't know. It's like, and we had this discussion so many times on Space 1999. I don't mind the I don't know answer. I don't know in science is a good answer. We have to figure this out. I don't need that spoon fed to me. These things came up. Something caused them to pop out. Why is it big? I don't know. It seems
The fact that they acknowledged it is what I thought was kind of nice.
Yeah. Now, they do say, and of course at the time this may very well have been true, that pteranodons were the largest pterosaurs known, flying reptiles. But now it's universally considered to be Quetzalcoatlus, although I hear another one may have been found that's bigger, but Quetzalcoatlus is still kind of holding. And that one pushes out to 39 feet wingspan. So thank goodness that this film wasn't called Quaddalus. And then it'd have to be 390 feet across in there.
Well, unfortunately, there is a really, really bad movie.
Quetzalcoatl, yeah.
Oh my God! Oh my God! It's a prehistoric buzzard.
Yeah. That is a bad film.
That's a truly bad movie. That's our next movie. It better not be.
No. I don't think so.
I couldn't take that one. That was really awful.
There is the fact, and this is, I dislike this. I'm gonna plant my flag here. They have the artistic representation of the pteranodon. They have an artist's representation, an artist's recreation of a pteranodon, a drawing, painting, and they have a photograph of the wingtip and the talon.
Oh yeah.
And not only are they the same, they're the exact same scale. They are a puzzle piece that when he pushes it over,
they kind of match. It's like, okay, what were the odds of that happening?
0. 0. So close to 0 as to be 0. There is just no way that could have worked.
Unless they played with when they were developing the picture, they were shrinking it, blowing it up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that it finally did match the scale of the drawing that they had. See, but that's really a leap.
I have one other way it could have happened. The Arthur Conan Doyle is a fool way. The book, the fairies that Arthur Conan Doyle was so enamored with, the girls who found the fairies at the garden and took the photographs of them. You're familiar with this story?
I've heard that a long time ago, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Arthur Conan Doyle was a big proponent of this because despite creating Sherlock Holmes, he was a bit of a loony.
He was a nutter.
He was a nutter. Okay, well, we'll go straight there. And he believed these girls who took these pictures of what they said were fairies at the bottom of their garden, and very big cause celeb. But years later, either the girls admitted it or somebody found the book. They had a book with pictures of fairies in it. They cut them out. They stuck them on little pieces of metal, wire, stuck them in the garden, and then snapped pictures of them. And because they were on wire, they were moving because, a little bit of breeze and they would kind of wobble back and forth. And so they created the effect that these things were actually in motion when the girls caught the pictures. But if you find the book, you can cut the things out and you can lay them right over the top and go, oh yeah, exact same cutout. So if that couple that died actually did commit suicide, and the last thing they did was they took a picture from that particular book where that artwork came from as a hoax, and then left that in the camera, and then jumped into the volcano, leaving only one shoe behind, then that is the only logical explanation as to how those two pictures could have fit like that.
Have you tried to tell the young people of the world that today? They'll never believe you.
I'll never believe it. Nope. But that one did annoy me. Let's see. Like I say, and that picture is there in the hospital when they're trying to show him the thing. Let's see. The only thing I have left on my notes is to just say, what did you think? And remembering that there is a better Blu-ray copy of this out there that I have not seen. What did you think of the FX?
For its time, and understanding, this is a Japanese monster movie. There's there's an implication when you say Japanese monster movie that says cheap.
Man in a rubber suit. Yep.
Right. Lots of miniature effects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And having seen a gazillion of these things already now.
Yep.
I thought the effects were actually, they were standard. They met what I expected a Japanese monster movie of that time to look like. Yeah,
so the Godzilla film that predates this is obviously a man in a rubber suit, and it looks like a man in a rubber suit. But for its age, for its time, it was groundbreaking, and and it was very effective for the audiences, which was the important part. I thought, I don't know if this is the first color one, or whether Godzilla versus the Thing is the first color one.
No, this is the first color one. In fact, I've got the notes up. The film was Toho's first horror film and first monster film to be shot in color.
Okay. Yeah, see, that does make a difference to what you're doing. And I thought it was pretty good, but I'm going to put the qualifying but there. It's really tough to get away with a man in a rubber suit and flying.
Yes.
Right? You can definitely see the wires lifting that guy up or trying to lift that guy up.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that got me that I noticed is at one point when Rodan is in a quote unquote standing position and is just there. And I thought, those are the most human looking legs I have ever seen on a prehistoric bird.
Well,
can't be helped.
Can't be helped.
Cannot be helped.
Well, look at Anguirus. So Anguirus would be the second monster they introduced in basically Godzilla Returns, which is called Gigantus the Fire Monster here. And in that one, we get our second kaiju, which is Anguirus, which is the sort of spiky four-legged thing. And, those are the most, hey, that's a man on his knees costume you've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Anguirus is a bit of a problem. All of those kaiju are a bit of a problem if they go down on all fours because, short of cutting somebody off at the knees to fit in the costume, they're not going to get around that. Now you can because you can CGI it, but
exactly
back then it was impossible. So yeah, Rodan's legs, they're stocky and they're human, but you're right. But when he tries to fly, and of course it's so obviously being hoisted up on pulleys.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder if the Blu-rays, okay, this is just a question for you. What do you think? So you're remastering Rodan, which I am going to find a way to get hold of that Blu-ray. I've already got the DVD, damn it. I don't want to buy the Blu-ray. But anyway, you remaster the Blu-ray and you go back to the film and you do a beautiful job. Do you edit out the wires?
Wow. I would. But at the same time, I can see the novelty in keeping them in just for folly.
The filmmaker intentionally is doing everything they can to hide the wires.
True. So
you can't make the argument that says this is how the filmmaker wanted it to look.
No, and I wouldn't do that, but I could see the argument about keeping them in as a nod to the era in which the movie was made.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would remove them.
I'm sort of torn on that. Now, I would either remove them at the minimum, at the most, if I had the budget, and
I'd replace all the kaiju with CGI.
I'd replace it exactly. Didn't they do something like that with one of the older Gamera movies?
Not that I've seen, but
okay, I must be thinking one of the newer ones. Then
they've done that with some Star Trek episodes, and
I was
going to go
totally
there
redo I would totally redo it with CGI, and then somehow try to treat it. But
I think somebody would get upset about that one.
Well, yeah, because that, you're sort of, again, we're talking about the nostalgia of which these movies were made, but being the monster movie fanatics that you and I are, I would like to go ahead and just completely replace it with CGI and then kind of treat the finished product to make it look like it's older so that it better blends in and not quite stick out like such a sore thumb or something like that. I mean, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. I'm going to say, Ben, that's probably a controversial hot take.
Of course it is. I don't doubt that, but that's what I would do. Yeah. And I'd piss everybody. I know I would piss off all the classic kaiju. It goes right back to the special edition Star Wars movies that Lucas did.
Yeah, there's a good example. That went over really well.
Thing. Yeah.
That went over really well with the fans. They loved
And
replacing all that with CGI.
And yet there's a whole group of fans. I mean, the fandom was really split on that. I loved the newer editions. And I'm just as big a Star Wars fan as anybody. And yet I know there are people that say, nope, I like the original. I like the way it was done. I liked how it looked back then. They should never have changed it.
I think that I am generally not, we'll come back to Godzilla films in a minute, but like I am absolutely not offended when they update the special effects on Star Trek or
No.
old Doctor Who. That does not bother me, provided that they do an okay job on it, right? Sometimes they do a half-ass job, and then that's kind of
no, that's no good.
then you're like, well, if you were going to do it, you got to do it. You got to do it right. You got to not
If you're
do it.
if you're only going to go halfway, then don't even bother at all.
Yeah, don't bother. But in Star Wars specifically, my recollection is, and I do have the originals.
I do too.
I'm unedited,
I have both.
done up. There's more than just changing out the special effects. There are things that have been done that just seem to alter bits of the film. And I can't think of any specific example, but the closest thing I can think of, and this is not germane, is the, who shot first kind of thing.
Well, that was a bad choice on Lucas's part.
But it's, you change what the person is seeing in the room, you are perhaps changing what they should be responding to. And so there's you got to be careful. And Lucas was, of all things, was careful, right? Lucas goes big.
He did. He really
have Han Solo walking
tilt
across Jabba's tail, kind of nonsense. And of course, that's an added scene, and that's a different beast. But anyway,
well, we can argue that one. It had been originally filmed, but then cut out because he didn't know how to put in the big slug in there. So
part of the charm of the Godzilla films is the guy in the rubber suit. And so, don't look at Rodan. Don't look at Godzilla, right? Let's step forward and look at Son of Godzilla or Destroy All Monsters or Godzilla's Revenge, right? These are, well, I like Destroy All Monsters, but, Godzilla's Revenge or Son of Godzilla, these are really hokey.
Oh, they're bad. Especially Godzilla's Revenge.
Films.
That is a bad movie. It's just a hack piece of Son of Godzilla.
Yeah. Replacing those films with high quality FX.
Ew.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. It's just, you can't look at that film and go, nah, it would be better if you replaced this with good effects. No, it would be even worse. I think the film would be even worse if you did that. So
it'd be jarring.
Even if you did try to disguise it by making the film grain look terrible compared to the I'm just
saying. It wouldn't work. Those movies are so bad to begin with.
And when you've got something that is so effects heavy, right? Monsters fighting each other. At what point do you just say, let's just do a shot for shot remake as opposed to replacing the effects?
I
don't know.
It can be argued either way. I guess it just depends on the movie. It really does. I mean, Rodan. I mean, you didn't quite. I don't know if you asked this at the top of the episode, but what did I think of this movie? I like this movie. I like it a lot. I mean, in spite of some of the little critical things that you and I have been saying, but I get the feeling you like it too. I enjoyed this movie a great deal, and I think it is probably one of the stronger kaiju movies that I've seen in a long time for its age. Now, I've seen some really bad ones come later on down the road, just hideously bad.
Yeah.
King Kong versus Godzilla. Oy.
Well, King Kong Godzilla versus Godzilla is not a good film, but it's still one of the early phase where you're not looking at a truly awful Godzilla versus Megalon or
that's
Godzilla.
Just garbage.
Yeah.
That era, Megalon.
Era of Mecha Godzilla.
I was going to say Mecha Godzilla. I mean, these movies were just crap.
They're bad. They're truly
they're horrible. Yeah, it's that earlier generation, but still, I look at like Oh, the King Kong in that movie is so bad.
Oh, he looks terrible. Yeah. The King Kong himself is just absolutely flea bitten, just the matted. It looks so bad. And the face, the paper mache face.
Yep.
They manage the kaiju like Godzilla because the face is rubber,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or Rodan, the face is rubber, or
Right.
any of those. But King Kong, because he tried to put an ape face on it, which is skin and flesh, it's the face of a Charlie McCarthy type puppet.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not, and it's got the eyeballs that move behind. It's just like, oh yeah, no, terrible choice of that film. So, but that's not so bad in the War of the Gargantuans, because they do it differently. But,
that is true. That movie did look better.
Yeah, and it's basically the same age.
Yeah.
Or what did they call that in the U.S.? Something about Frankenstein's monster.
What? Really?
Don't you remember? It was like one of the Gargantuans was actually like a child who ate a starving child who ate the brain of Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, see, I'm thinking of a different movie. There is
War of the Gargantuans.
That's the one that I was thinking of.
But there's another one that uses one of those monsters as Frankenstein's monster.
I don't remember that.
I think it's the exact same suit as one of the two of them, but I would have to look it up. However, that's not Rodan. So
no.
My question to you is, do you have anything else about this film?
No, not really. Again, this was an enjoyable film. Not what I expected, especially watching it today with what I know about kaiju movies and having seen Rodan, so many times now and knowing what to expect. This movie was not what I thought it was going to be, and yet it was enjoyable. So if you know who Rodan is or what Rodan is, and you decide you want to check it out, just be prepared.
All right. Well, in that case, Ben, thank you for joining me.
That was a pleasure.
And listeners, I hope you'll join us all again next time on Fusion Patrol.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Fusion Patrol. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/fusionpatrol or patreon.com/fusionpatrol. For our monthly Patreon subscribers, we're currently running a special series on Babylon 5. Come join the conversation and find other content at fusionpatrol.com. And we're back on social media, where you can also follow us on Mastodon and the Fediverse. Our address is @podcast@fusionpatrol.com. Our music is Fight the Future by Amberwolf. This has been a Lone Locust production. Next time, it's the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century episode, Unchained Woman. Come join the conversation on Fusion Patrol.